If you are consuming any kind of media and one of the following appears on your screen, you immediately will be able to recognize them as icons. Whether in the recent outings or OG classics, their act will always be treated as the bar for villains when it comes to films. Now, who is a villain? According to the internet, a character in a play, novel or alike constitutes an important evil agency in the plot can be termed as a villain. Honestly, this does not clarify much about the intention for one to become a villain, since in most films, villains are the one who opposes the hero. Voldemort, Hannibal Lecter, Golem, Darth Vader all feels like doomsday on our doorstep. You can't trust them, but disobeying them means death outright. That is how a villain should feel. They need a motive, and the journey towards that goal needs to feel more desperate, as that establishes the fear of what happens if they succeed. Although I'm not complaining, I have read Berserk and played plenty of Souls games, so I kinda like the grim world. But the proper example of well-written villain arc would be in comic book genre. In the last decade, there has been heaps of comic pages being adapted to the big screen or the OTT platform. Around 68 of them are just DC and Marvel titles. So we must have tons of new iconic villains, right? Well, if you ask me what's my favorite live action superhero content, the list would start with Matt Reeves' Batman topping the list, followed by Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The Boys and the Infinity War. Although I liked the Joker and Logan, I feel they lacked the same level of multi-action thrill compared to the ones on my list. But that's a personal opinion. Your list will definitely differ from mine. Matt Reeves treated the villains in the film really well. Even though there were numerous villains, the Riddler stands out and feels like a legitimate threat since it's a product of grounded storytelling with well-balanced pacing of its acts. Batman, on the other hand, comes across as a hero who has answers but isn't wholly sure of himself. Therefore, it is the journey the audience experiences of Batman understanding the gravity and acting accordingly. We also observe Batman does take the dark route but still has enough control over himself, thus preventing the fact of not going completely AOL. This balance shift is what enables the writer to forge a much compelling story. The entire film feels gloomy, gritty and dark, and this is exactly what I wanted from a Batman film, alongside being accompanied by beautiful cinematography and a great score. Now that I'm done praising the Batman film, and the only reason I mentioned it at the beginning is that I wanted to set a standard to which I will be comparing MCU content to, more likely the newer releases. MCU has been lacking in this thrill factor, along with the fact that most of their films does not have the re-watch capability. A major reason why it feels like this is because MCU lacks the balancing factors for its villains. You have to agree that the only legit threat the heroes were up against was against Thanos. Even though, according to me, he felt quite underwhelming. There has always been a borderline issue with MCU's villain arcs. Yes, to most of you, Thanos feels like a legit boss. But what about his henchmen or henchwoman, known as the Black Order? As none of them received the proper screen time. Now, out of them, I am particularly disappointed about Proxima Midnight. In the comics, she was depicted as a gladiator who was so strong that she broke several of Luke Cage's ribs and even killed Shuri. She was also responsible for turning Namor to the dark side, which led to a major uprising between Wakanda and Atlantis. Whereas in the film, she was limited to only 4 minutes 15 seconds of the screen time. So are you trying to tell me that in all the 16 films, you could not give her around 20 minutes of screen time? Now that is really bad character planning. Another example of bad writing was how Thanos was portrayed in the What If TV show and Multiverse of Madness. These scenes annoy me as they render Thanos' superiority arc in the Infinity Saga useless. The same can be said with the Infinity Stones, which now serves as paperweights. If you're trying to write something off as remarkable as the Infinity Stone, then try to come up with a better idea instead of this. Well, this is similar to dropping a big shat on the faces of the writer as well as the fans of the Infinity Saga. At this point, there are multiple videos explaining why Multiverse of Madness went wrong. I'll also say that even though my pre-write wouldn't have come across as a better fit, but it would have been much better than what we witnessed in the actual film. Although I did not mention the incursion, I was pretty much correct when I mentioned Wanda will act as the main villain, she will kill off the entirety of Illuminati, and then ultimately she will turn good by the end of the film. But the actual film was somewhat mid. The writers failed to showcase the brutality of Wanda in an effective manner. Yes, they wrote an imbalanced character arc. Wanda in the film came off as an unstoppable force who easily took out few of the world's best, if not the best heroes. Killing off Professor Charles without having a proper telekinesis battle portrays Professor to be weak. The younger audience who are only aware of Marvel through MCU will have no respect for the legendary character that of Charles Xavier. Also, I felt that John Krasinski should not have been casted as Mr. Fantastic since his status has been reduced to this. MCU might have just ensured that another good character gets butchered due to the writer's lack of knowledge about the character and their alternative character forms in the Marvel comic universe. I can ramble all day about how important Mr. Fantastic is, and yes, he serves both as a hero and a villain, but we'll talk about that later someday. I read a lot of mangas, and there are so many things that ensures that the reader experiences thrill and enjoyment even though the person is going through monochromatic graphic pages. For example, in the shonen category, the author usually tends to write protagonists up through tough scenarios or environments, but instead of dropping unexplained power-ups, they focus on building a compelling story. Yes, you can point out the case of One Punch Man, but his overpowered nature is done in the right way. Let's look back at Multiverse of Madness. Here, the writers are trying to make Wanda feel overpowered, which not only did they fail at making her a badass villain, but she looked more pathetic by the end of the film, since Wanda figures out her plan was flawed all along and takes the supposed self-sacrifice route. And I would argue with the writers that this portrayal of Wanda in Multiverse of Madness does not make her a relatable villain at all. They could have instead opted to mention that the Darkhold had completely corrupted Wanda's thought, solidifying her as a villain and not as an anti-hero. The current saga of MCU is titled the Multiverse Saga. The finale to this series is The Secret Wars, where multiple variants of a superhero fight each other to keep their planet safe from incursions. Therefore, having a rogue Wanda would have been much more exciting considering the power levels that was showcased in the film. Instead, MCU opted to play safe and did the self-sacrificing scene, which at this point is quite the overdone trope. Or else, the writer could have gone down the route where Wanda had to be contained in a separate dimension and watched over by Uatu the Watcher or other godlike entities. This helps solidify the What If series as a canon to the main MCU films and TV show. Now, another question that arrives is, does MCU have such significant villain arcs? No, the villains showcased in MCU hardly have compelling arcs compared to the arcs in the comics, which are actually fun. For example, Gore the God Butcher. He is one of the best Thor villains who is a complete badass on his revenge quest to end all gods, while the live action version did not even show him going through his journey of massacring the gods. No, I would not count the shot where they showed a mixed glimpses of all his victims. Number 2, Chthon. The creator of the Darkhold, who holds immense power to corrupt any being and more, was just name dropped in the entire Multiverse of Madness film, while the film also ensured he won't be in the MCU anymore by removing all the Darkhold present in the timeline before Wanda's sacrifice. Wow, MCU, you just shot at your own foot. Imagine making a Midnight Sun film with Chthon as the main villain. Sadly, you can't do that anymore. Number 3, Dormammu. Another villain who was quickly swept under the rug. Dormammu is a villain who has world-ending powers in the comics and is treated like a real threat, unlike its counterpart in MCU, where he's still scared of Doctor Strange and his time loop magic. So there goes another iconic villain inside the chamber of being let down. And the list actually continues. You can take every villain that has featured in the MCU, and you will find the comics have featured much superior villain arcs compared to what is shown in the MCU. So, does MCU has an issue with villains? Yes, absolutely. They cannot take a villain and make their presence feel iconic. Thanos felt like a threat. But we are into a new phase now, and the Foundation phase sucked. So, aren't there any good villains? Well, there are tons of Marvel villains who have the potential and the charisma to be influential. One of them is Doctor Doom, but a major problem is one of his major war arcs has been slapped on Kang the Conqueror. Yes, the entire Secret War arc is where Doom excels the most, but it is something MCU decided, nah, we are gonna take our time traveler and make him feel cooler. Well, this makes me worried about Doctor Doom, even before we get a Fantastic Four or a Wakanda Forever film, because I am scared that Doctor Doom will be pushed aside to the forgotten territory since the next big thing after Kang is Galactus. As this seems like MCU will never treat its comic counterpart equally since they have always changed major storylines just to fit a certain narrative, as this should be considered as major disservice to the comic book fans. Imagine you are reading the Chainsaw Man manga. You really love the Bomb Devil arc, but in the anime adaptation, you are treated Kobeni as the Bomb Devil in the Reese's arc. No, that is considered a violation. Fans will actively drive their Fiat 500 just to drop burgers on MAPPA's CEO. You just can't take someone's active gimmick and apply it to someone else. Ask any pro wrestling fan if they even liked Alexa Bliss being the new Fiend instead of Bray Wyatt. Well, the answer is no. Then you might even ask the question, well, can't they even flex their muscles and show they're being creative? Well, to that answer, I would say yes, there are some creative decisions which Marvel has taken well, I would say, such as keeping the Defenders away from the initial Avengers phase, improvising a lot of dialogues to create fan favorite moments, incorporating tons of Easter eggs, which is a major comic book fan service, and lastly, giving indie directors the chance to outshine in the Wild West. This now has led to some new issues. One such issue is the Thunderbolts. On paper, they're basically the Marvel's answer to the Suicide Squad, but the MCU adaptation of the team already stings, and here's why. They have mostly included super soldiers, 4 to be exact, and little to no compelling character arcs. Yelena feels dumb. She's a spy who claims to fact check and research her victims, but she was easily lied to in the face by Val. Ghost is a good choice, but no screen time after Ant-Man 2 is really damaging her reputation. And Marvel's adaptation of Taskmaster is not acceptable at all. The only one I can get behind is Baron Zemo, and there are tons of continuity issues which if I start mentioning in this video will end up being 1 hour long, and people hardly watch my videos as this stat shows 6900% of you who watch my videos aren't even subscribed. So go and subscribe to the channel and allow me to take my anxiety on a date. Hi, this is the uncut version of me, and as you can see from the background, nothing is organized. Just like my videos and my thoughts, I thought this would be a good segue from those monotonous audio spectrums. This is a section where I would like to talk to the MCU higher-ups, like a heart-to-heart session. You guys don't actually follow the comic book anyways. Am I disappointed in that? Yes, but it's a decision that has tons of perks. Alongside making something really unique, you can actually forge storylines which can make the villains look really strong, and you can create some memorable villain arcs. I'm not here to talk about how to write good villain arcs. If you're still lost about it, there are tons of videos in YouTube, and here are a few of those videos that I'm linking down. You can go and take references from them. Another such example would be the balancing difference of villains in mangas. If you really want to read something, go and read Tatsuki Fujimoto's Chainsaw Man, the International Assassin arc, where there is this darkness devil, an entity which is showcased to be an S-tier devil. But its appearance time in the entire series is limited to only 3 chapters out of 102 complete chapters. Yes, it is enough. Enough time to inflict pain and fear not only into the characters of the series but also its readers. This is where I would like to refer to a well-structured video made by Captain Midnight, where he explains why, for MCU, the Disney Plus route isn't a good choice, and I completely agree with him. And that video is linked in the description down below. Marvel has been in the limelight ever since the OG 2012 Avenger film. Since then, they have cemented the ideology of being too big to fail. And yes, anything remotely Avenger related is considered collectible, which means they are kinda riding their peak mainstream popularity. Okay, since we are nearing the end of the video, there is something I would like to state. MCU is not a lost cause at all. Just because I'm ranting in this video and I'm mentioning a lot of things that I don't like about MCU, there are tons of things about a MCU TV show or a film that excites me till to this date. Eagerly looking forward to go and watch Wakanda Forever in the cinemas. And I was really happy when I saw Werewolf by Night. But there are tons of things which MCU should not do, and by that I mean I refer to this clip. And that is because it is high time MCU starts treating its audience really well, because instead of doing things like that, they should start making content which are actually highly praised by people from other fandom or the people from the industry, because there has been so many directors, so many producers who actively slated MCU a lot. And being a fan of the comics and seeing big directors talking not highly about the content which you like is really saddening. I guess it's high time that they should start making content which fans from other fandom goes to watch and say, yes, that was some experience, might go and watch it again in cinemas or might just catch it again in Disney Plus. And by that I would like to state, like, yes, there are tons of projects that I am really excited about. Phase 4 hasn't been a steady ride for MCU. There has been a lot of critiques about them and their quality, and especially that their quality has dropped after the end of Infinity Saga. But I would like to also state, like, there are tons of good things that have come out of MCU. To some extent, I did like the Eternals and how they were shaping it up. Even when the initial honeymoon phase for Spider-Man Far From Home died down, I was a bit skeptical because I still hold Batman at a better level than what I consider Spider-Man Far From Home is. So there's a big difference. Even after that, I still felt like Spider-Man Far From Home has that valuation. It feels like a complete saga and it gives Spider-Man a new direction to go forward to, and that is something that I can really root for because he's finally getting back to his comic roots. As I mentioned, Werewolf by Night was a really interesting take. It had those 90s horror elements and the color grading. Even though they could not nail actual filmic atmosphere, I do think the entire concept was really well done, and it's high time that Marvel starts having its own horror verse, because there are so many characters they can pick and choose from, and I would be really excited about that if Kevin Feige and co decides to go down that route. And another thing that I'm really excited about is that Secret Invasion is getting a TV show instead of getting a film, which is actually better, since having 6 or 9 episodes allocated to it is much better than having to rush through the entire plot of Secret Invasion in just 2 hours or 3 hours at max. These are some new changes that I'm very excited for and I'm looking forward to. Now there is something which I would like to state too. Marvel, you need to refigure this situation out real fast, because there are people who are getting bored of your stuff, and for obvious reasons. Maybe my video aren't well planned or written, but I still try to mention the areas where I am disappointed with your shows and films. Even though you are producing heaps of money, there has been a major degradation to the quality. Most of your Disney Plus shows feels lackluster. Also, prioritizing the shows over the film has led to a major shift in dynamics. Serving a film or a TV episode almost every week to your audience does necessarily state one thing, and that is you have moved on to the quantity over quality model. And this is very much visible to the way you treated your Marvel villains then, now, and maybe in the future.